Assalamu alaikum. My name is Imran Jan, and you're watching my YouTube channel. Today, I want to address the issue of the Israeli-Hamas conflict, and the reason I'm going to record this in English, I want to clarify that at the outset of the video, is because I think it is the Western audience, primarily the American audience, that needs a little bit of schooling on this issue more than any other people anywhere in the world. Because the Western propaganda machinery is very, very effective in creating this image in the minds of the people that the Israelis or Israel as a country needs to defend itself against attacks from the outside, and it's such a nice and such a victim of the atrocities and attacks from Hamas and Palestinians and other countries in the region. Other militant groups and organizations in the region. So while some of it is true to an extent, but the bigger picture is a lot more nuanced, which needs to be explained. And again, I'll try to record the same video in Urdu so that the Pakistani audience also can look and it reaches a mass audience. But at the same time, I don't think that the Pakistani people are confused about what's happening. It's, like I said, the Western audience, the American audience, that must be told about what actually is going on. And I'm just going to try my best to explain that with a little bit of context and a little bit of history without going too much into detail, because it's a long history. This is not something that started a few years ago. So I will try my best to do that. Before I get into that, I do want to say that for those who actually do some reading, if you read the New York Times and Washington Post, and I've read pretty much everything that they've published in the last few days, you will not get the full picture. No wonder the New York Times always says on the top right corner of the front page, all the news that is fit to print, and they actually mean it. Don't doubt that. They actually do print what is fit to print. I want to connect this to something that used to happen in Pakistan a few years ago when Imran Khan's government was in charge. We always heard that journalists in Pakistan have to indulge in self-censorship, that they know what is not going to be acceptable to the regime in charge, so they just censor themselves and they say the things that they know will be published or broadcast. Now, if you look at the American journalists, the ones in the mainstream media, like I said, the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, these are actually the journalists that are indulging in self-censorship more than anyone else that I have known, because it is quite obvious from when you listen to and when you read what they have said. So if you really want to understand, get a full picture of what actually is going on. And again, I'm not talking about the more than 100-year history. I'm talking about what is happening right now, what is the context of it. If you want to get the full picture and full analysis of what is happening, and even full reporting of what is happening, please do read Al Jazeera. I highly recommend it. And to an extent, The Guardian is a lot better than the New York Times and the Washington Post. And forget CNN. That has become a comedy channel. It's if you want to laugh, watch CNN. They're going to give a hard time to Fox News when it comes to comedy. So don't rely on that. If you rely on that, you are in trouble. You will not get the full picture. So just a few things I wanted to say before I start explaining and start getting into my attempt to explaining what actually is the case and what is happening and what are the things that are unsaid, never mentioned in the Western media. So let's get into that. So I'm going to break it down into simple facts of history. 1967 and 1973, two wars were fought between Israel and Egypt and other Syria, and in the whole region there were fights. There was a war two wars that happened. Israel defeated Egypt and Syria, of course, with the help of the United States, captured the Golan Heights from Syria, also occupied East Jerusalem in 1967. Ever since that part of that region has been under a military occupation by the Israelis. until that war, until 1967 and 1973, the main argument of the Israelis was basically, it could be summed up as self-defense, security, the need for security, the need for securing that country. That's one common factor between Israel and Pakistan, is that both were created as states for certain people of certain religious belief. Pakistan for Muslims, Israel for Jews. And both had this sense and the need for security from day one. But in 1967 and 1973, after Israel defeated Egypt and in Syria, that argument went away. That argument did not make sense. It did not hold water anymore, because Israel came up as this strong state that could militarily defeat anyone in the region. Muslim states in the region were, they were not so strong. They proved to be weak and disoriented. So that argument went away. Now, Israel no more could justify its activities and its expansion based on the fact that we need security for our state. That's why we are occupying these other different Palestinian regions and Palestinian lands, because we need to keep the mainstream, the heartland of Israel safe. Once that argument faded, once that went away, the argument that was surfaced after that, security need was gone, was that the fact that Israel defeated these states in the region, in the Middle Eastern region, was a signal from God that we should keep expanding, and that it actually was a signal from God, meaning that the all-Jewish state was actually a reality, and that the promise was finally being fulfilled, and Israel needs to just keep going with that mission and keep listening to the messages from God. So you could argue that in a way Israel went from the need for security to the God signal. That's what they started following. Once that happened, well, then there was a conflict between that to the all-Jewish state, because if Israel was going to continue to expand to Palestinian lands and occupying and taking and engulfing or whatever Palestinian lands it could occupy, it meant that they would be including the people who were living on those lands, meaning the Palestinians, into the greater Israel. So then what happened to the all-Jewish state? The signal from God was about all-Jewish state, as they were saying. So that would mean that it really was not going to be an all-Jewish state. So that created another conflict in their whole strategy to continue grabbing Palestinian land. So then another idea was born, which basically was about expelling the Palestinians. They even had this idea of paying the Palestinians to leave. And that's why so many of Palestinians were expelled to Jordan and other neighboring states. That was part of that whole plan. But here is the crux of this whole issue. This current conflict right now, Hamas attacking Israel, and what happened before it, what prompted that is not what the New York Times or the Washington Post or the CNN, for that matter, would tell you. That's why I said, read Al Jazeera, read The Guardian also. Or if there's any other publication you can find. Financial Times used to be this great publication, it used to be this great newspaper, but it's almost as if it's infiltrated by so many Indian authors now. And I'm not saying all Indian authors are bad, but they stick to this certain narrative and certain point of view, which takes away that whole credible journalism that Financial Times used to practice. So you cannot even rely on Financial Times anymore, as far as I have seen it, as far as my observation has been concerned. You cannot rely on Financial Times anymore. So stick to, of course, the mainstream American journalism, but do touch upon Al Jazeera and The Guardian also, so you can understand. So again, as I was saying, that in order to understand this current conflict, you have to, if I could sum it up in a few words, I will say this is partly religious, partly political, and partly about real estate also. You could say it's at the same time, it's religious, not religious, political, and it's about real estate also. Mainly, this is political. If you look at the current whatever is happening right now. And I'm going to explain why this is political and not very religious, although they have given it that, that whole touch of religion. But that's not what is happening actually. That's not what is actually driving all this. And that's what I'm going to explain to you right now. There's a Jewish law in Israel that says that Jews will not be allowed to enter Al-Aqsa Masjid, Al-Aqsa Mosque. They will not be allowed. Let me repeat that. There's a Jewish law that says Jews should not be allowed to enter the Al-Aqsa Masjid, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Yet they continue to enter. And there's a tendency, there's certain organizations that are getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars by the Ministry of Education and I guess the Ministry of Culture of Israel, that is furthering that narrative and that idea that we need to defy this Jewish law, which is, by the way, based in Judaism and Jewish culture and Jewish religion. As I mentioned, there is a Jewish law that says that, Jews should not be allowed to enter the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And then there are these other organizations that are getting paid by the government of Israel to further this narrative that, we need to defy that Jewish law and we should be allowing Jews to enter the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And they are coming up with this argument which says that not the entire compound of the Al-Aqsa Mosque is all sacred. Only a tiny part of that mosque is sacred. It's called the Holy of the Holies, something like that. Only that part should not be visited by the Jews. All other compounds should be, accessible to the Jews. That creates that friction. That creates that trouble, and that trouble helps the politics of Israel, especially the leadership of Israel, in interesting ways. That is also why one of the, perhaps I should call it a conspiracy theory. One of the conspiracy theories that are getting floated online on social media and on Twitter is that perhaps, it's not true that the Israeli intelligence and the American intelligence missed all this. Maybe this is, they allowed it to happen. Maybe they orchestrated all this to happen for political or maybe other causes, other ambitions. And I'm going to get into that. So a little bit of context that I want to give you. In the year 2000, Ariel Sharon wanted to defy that religious law and enter into the Al-Aqsa, allow Jews to enter the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The leader at the time, the Israel leader at the time, Ehud Barak, was against that because he knew the powder keg aspects of that. He knew what trouble could come after that. But nevertheless, that did not stop Ariel Sharon from, moving further with it. And the rest is history. We saw the Second Intifada, and then there was a war, and all kinds of problems happened. In 2015, the same happened. They allowed the Jews to go inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and then there was a war again. This attack by Hamas, days ago, that when they attacked Israel and, rained thousands of rockets and all that, we know what happened. What the New York Times and Washington Post and the leading American publications will not say is that days before this, there was the same act of Israeli Jews entering the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which again, even the Jewish law says that you cannot do that. Jews should not be entering the Al-Aqsa Mosque. But it did happen, and whenever that happens, there's always extreme anger and extreme results. And that is exactly what we're seeing right now. It's not that the Israeli leadership does not know this. If I know it and, people in the world, the average people in the world know it, of course they know it too, that every time they do this, war happens. So that's what I meant when I earlier said, this is both religious and not religious. It may be painted as something driven by religion and rooted in religion, but in reality, this is about politics. When I mentioned that in the year 2000, Ariel Sharon went ahead with the plan, his approval rating at the time went from 3% to 70%. Let me repeat that, from 3% approval rating to 70% approval rating. They know that this always works. People may die, Israelis may die, Palestinians may die, but the leadership gets all benefits. And we know how Benjamin Netanyahu came into power after so much trouble. He was about to go to jail for so many corruption charges. And now with this, and moments after the attack, he went online and he went in front of the cameras and said, "We are at war." It always, whenever there's a situation like that, people rally around the flag. Nationalistic fervor, ultra-nationalism, patriotism. As they say, patriotism is the last refuge of a scoundrel. That's exactly what is happening right now. That's exactly what we're watching right now. So this is political. This is not so much religious as we are made to believe that this is. Hamas also attacked because they got angry. I'm not trying to justify killing on any side. All I'm saying is there are reasons behind their anger. And if they did it really without minus the conspiracy theory that the Israelis are orchestrating all this, then you can explain that from the point of view that there is so much anger behind this because of the Aqsa Mosque episode and all that. At the same time, if the conspiracy theory really is true, you could explain that from the point of view that it does benefit the Israeli leadership. And Benjamin Netanyahu would love nothing more than that. So we'll see what happens in the days ahead, and will give us a much better understanding of what actually is going on. But I do want to contrast what is happening in Israel with what usually happens in the Muslim world, especially Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. In Israel, they are defying their religious authority to pursue their political goals. They're saying, we want to defy this religious law or edict that says that Jews should not be allowed to enter the Aqsa Mosque, and we are going to pursue our political goals. We're not going to listen to you, the religious authority. In the Muslim world, whenever they want to pursue some political goals, they use some kind of fatwa, an edict, from some kind of imam at a higher authority that gives out this fatwa, this authorization for whatever the political goal of the leadership at the time is, and then they go ahead with it. So there's a contrast with that. When the Muslim world wants to do something, they create a religious justification for that. In Israel, they actually defy the religious law. At the same time, they want to paint it as a religious matter. All that is happening. So quite interesting and quite convoluted, quite disturbing at the same time. But like I said, we'll see what happens in the days ahead. And I'll be keeping a close eye on all of these events. And will be trying my best to give you my point of view and my understanding based on research, not just conjecture, which is what happens on YouTube and TikTok nowadays. But I'll be trying my best to explain things in a much more comprehensive manner. Until that, please do take care of yourselves and stay tuned for my next video. Thank you.